Well, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is CJ, as Tom told you, and this is my partner, Derek. So thank you for joining us to talk about data privacy today. So Derek, I think you are going to be putting up a little slideshow, not too many slides. We're going to do more talking than sliding. So Derek will make an awkward transition to getting those slides up there.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see our name, and you get to see how much money Derek gives ISACA. Letters next to the
renewals every year, yeah. Oh, shut that off. There we go.
You don't want to see our cursing. So today we're going to talk about, are you taking data privacy seriously? And with data privacy is everywhere. When you go see the first slide, when Nick asked us to do this, and you saw what the title of this was, I said, I'm going to go do a quick sneak peek, and I'm going to go look at some privacy policies or things that companies post on their websites, and just see how many people think that they take privacy seriously. And Derek and I, with what we do, as in a lot of consulting and a lot of virtual CISO work, doing assessments on companies. We walk in and these companies, talk about how important privacy is to them and how much they're protecting it and the controls they have in place. And again, one of the things we first do is I scope out their website. I scope out some of the things that they advertise that they have. I check out their privacy policy. What do they talk about, in terms of security? And Derek, if you go to the first slide, I think this took me 10 minutes. It took me 10 minutes to go to all these websites, and I cut out all these little things that said, your privacy is important to us. We care about your privacy.
I love when you put this together, CJ. It was like, all right, look at this. And I clicked on probably 2 or 3 different privacy policies too, and scroll right to the bottom, and it says last updated 2010. Great. So it's fresh.
No, it was important in 2010. Exactly. Not as much now. So again, privacy is important, right? Privacy is important. Privacy is tied to these controls. I asked my wife a funny question. So my wife and I have been married for 20 years. And as I started looking at this, I said, Julie, have you ever looked at a privacy? My wife does a lot of shopping. As most people on this webinar, whatever we're on. And she's looked at me. I don't even know what a privacy policy is. So that was a quick no. And I said, Julie, have privacy controls or the fact that your information might get out ever stopped you from buying something?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the price, depends on the deal, depends on what's out there. And then I asked her a third question. I said, Julie, do you know what I do for a living? And she said, no. So we got clear answers to all of them.
There may be other folks in this webinar that have the same problem. Because it doesn't translate well to your friends or your spouse, whoever it might be.
So I thought when I saw that was, okay, who's this privacy is important geared to? And I think it's geared to legislation. It's geared to GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA. It's tied to these regulations that are out there that are protecting us, are doing what, making sure the controls are in place so that these companies are protecting our information. So again, I think that's obviously an important piece of this, and that governance is a huge piece to this.
That point, CJ, with having the legal regulations, all that. Some people think it kind of builds a gap between security and privacy, whereas your privacy, you have to put on your legal hat and really understand that. But there is so much overlap that we're going to kind of ping about as we go further that brings security so close to privacy and helps obviously accentuate all the privacy controls that you need to have and make sure that they're strong enough. So, us security geeks have to understand this privacy component. It is red hot. It's out there every day, articles all over the place. So, as we go through this too, and CJ, you're on board with it too, is if anybody in the presentation here has a question, let's just fire it out in the chat and let's keep it dynamic and hopefully we can get a give and take as your questions come up, or even just a comment, just share something. And that way we want to make this a little more dynamic instead of us, wop, wop, wop at everybody about, data and security and privacy.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Derek. I mean, we all come into this with experience, whether it's over 20 years or whether it's 20 days. We all have experience, and I think that we've all learned from those experiences. We've all seen different things, and sharing some of those experiences. I've been fortunate enough to learn from other people's mistakes through a lot of my life, and in this role with Compass, kind of going in and maybe seeing things that companies can do better, things that they're maybe not doing the best at, or where they're cutting corners, and helping advise and helping them, clean up those mistakes. And seeing it from afar is nice. And sometimes those stories, I think, can help drive home a point or a thing. So I know Derek and I'll have a couple stories that we'll get to tell you, things that we've seen, that will really help drive things home.
So there's really a big technology component and security kind of baseline knowledge and different attributes of different security programs that really help show that privacy is important to you. And CJ and I say it quite a bit just preparing for this was CJ says, "Oh, how important is it to you?" And then the cost of a DLP solution is $50,000. Okay, I don't think it's that important.
That important. Well, it's important. It's not just not $50,000 important.
Yeah.
But yeah, where's that line? Where's that line? And how do you prove that it's important to you? Again, what kind of access controls do you have? Are you limiting access? I'm a big need to know guy. As you heard in the intro.
Military, yeah.
Need to know. We restrict things based on classification. We restrict things based on need to know. If you don't need to know something, why do you have to have access to it? And we come across this in any organization where somebody I call it the big red button. Right? So anytime you go on a Coast Guard ship or a Navy ship, they red buttons, and it's the boo, power goes up. What is this red button? So when somebody has access to something they shouldn't have access to, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm going to look around, I'm going to see what's in here. Come across something maybe I shouldn't come across. But my sell with that all the time is, well, if you have access,
who else does?
Who else has access?
Yeah. How many times do we go in and do an access control review and say, why are there 14 admins of this one system when there's 2 guys that should have control over it? Kind of separation of duties.
But they're the president. They're the owner. They need to have full access.
No.
Why? You can sell me on read only, but not but not read, not read and write access. So so those controls become a huge part of it. And again, that first line of defense, that user becomes very important. If you come across something that maybe you're a bigger company and IT's didn't go through, doesn't notice that maybe access had been aggregated during Corona. We had to give access to more people because more roles were backups, or some people didn't have access for a long time, or we had to furlough a bunch of people. So access got aggregated throughout that time. Well, now we've kind of hopefully come to a stabling point, and maybe Barbara doesn't realize, oh wow, I have access to this, but I never did before. Say something, bring that up. Again, be that first line of defense, be that second set of eyes, third, fourth, fifth set of eyes. Bring those things up, because in terms of data protection, keeping that information private, that's a very important role.
Yeah, right. It's a huge component. The data protection part is all right. It's all about privacy, but you have to take that data in that you want to keep private and make sure it's in that right wrapper, in that bubble, in that locked safe. And, no one has a key here and a back door there. We see it all the time. I can't tell you how often we're looking at different systems like that with, holes that kind of crept up. Maybe we'll call it the COVID creep. Just kind of bled up and bubbled up, and hey, I need to give everyone access. I don't want IT getting 40 tickets about I can't get here, I can't get there. It's the right way to do this, and it's one of those easier lines of defense to implement. It's not a tool, it's not a piece of technology. It's just a way that you can go into a system and keep it at the right level that only so and so needs to know.
It's paying attention. It's doing your due diligence. It's making sure you have control of information and where that information is. And that's, probably a good transition as we, kind of go, as we keep going forward. But see other things in here with encryption, whether it's the database or it's the device itself. That device needs to be a rock. If it gets lost, and it falls out of the car, falls out of the back, the basket in your bike, somebody picks it up. It should be a rock. It should be something that can throw in the ocean, skip across the. It shouldn't be any more valuable than that because I can't get into it. But so many people don't have that. So many companies aren't doing that. And then during Corona, I can't tell you how many companies they had desktops, and all of a sudden we're sending our workforce home and
quickly.
instead of picking up this big, the monitor and the tower, they went and bought 50, 100 laptops and said, here you go, go home, go home, go home. And there's no there's no BitLocker, there's no encryption on there. Is the endpoint protection to date? Is it consistent? Is it managed? Is there an agent on there where they can manage these computers, remote wipe capabilities, MDM, did they get enrolled in MDM? Do they even have an MDM solution? It depends on how much money it was, I guess, right? It goes back to DLP.
And how many other companies too also not only did the hustle for the, get a remote system going, but move quickly from on-prem to cloud. So now you're an M365. Did you even lock that down right? Did you put in the data loss prevention capabilities? Are you at the right licensing? MDM, are you managing those laptops through that solution now? It was a wild push right at the beginning and throughout the whole year. It continued, but to get all those systems implemented in, you hear now and then that there's some issues going on out there, but these are all different pieces of technology you got to keep in mind and different processes to keep, your eyes on to make sure that this stuff is staying private. It's all in the cloud now. It's, at least some form of it's in the cloud.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to that other side of, okay, you have these technical controls that can maybe help protect us and protect your organization. Honestly, it still comes down to training as well. If you're not training your employees on what to look for and what's PII and what's not PII, what's private and what's not, it's amazing that it's 2021 and some people don't really know what's PII and what's not. To be honest, I don't. It seems to be changing.
Yeah.
So I think everything's PII now. My ear size now is some form of PII because identify me.
Haircut too.
Yeah. Not my choice. Embracing it. We're embracing it. But those offboarding procedures. I mean, I've gone to. I can tell you a story. I went to a company where we were going to do a third-party access, so third-party system access audit, helping them kind of reel that in. And we're working with this person who was a high-ranking security person at the company for weeks leading up to it, getting some evidence, getting the systems. Friday afternoon at 2:00. Hey, we're still good to go for Monday. Yeah, we'll be there on Monday. See you on Monday. We get there on Monday. She got fired. We got fired Friday afternoon, and we start going. We start going through all these systems, and she still had access to all of them. And now the people in there are questioning. Looks like files had been changed. Things had been altered by her
over the weekend, right?
They hadn't removed her access.
Wow. So
anything she had access to, and again, just imagine what high-ranking security person. I'm sure she had access to just about everything, and who knows where it ends up.
Similar problem I ran into at another client too. This is probably 5 years removed from when a person left, and we're doing some sort of engagement about, maybe it was around cardholder data or something, and log into the system, happened to be like a Linux-based system, show me the users that are still there, and happen to be a user that I know of at a different company that was there years and years before. It's where's your process to keep this stuff safe and keep everything locked down to the right level. This person's been gone for years.
Right.
It's just crazy what we come across.
Yeah. So Derek, you don't mind going to that next slide?
Yeah.
So this is kind of what we talked about. Some of that.
There's some interesting pieces here. This is debatable stuff. Some good stories around these.
Yeah, I mean, so linked PII. So linked PII is that direct. So what a lot of, and be clear, there's no one governing body that says what PII is and what PII isn't. So it feels like a guess. And I got a guy on here I'm gonna have to meet, Derek. His name's Ryan Johnson. He's a fellow Coastie. So
nice.
Gave me a shout out in the Semper Paratus. So again, don't know when Ryan was in the Coast Guard, but
this is a good story. I like when you tell this one.
When I joined the Coast Guard, everything was Social Security numbers. Like I sat in line, standing like this, eyes in the boat for hours on end, and I swear we had Social Security numbers written in our tags and our shirts, in our underwear, you name it. Our Social Security number was everywhere. And this is the mid 90s. So as I go through my 21-year career, we finally catch up and say, well, we're not using Social Security numbers anymore. We're going to use EMPLIDs, employee IDs, because that's not PII. We want to make sure we're not putting PII everywhere. Well, guess what? And if Ryan is listening, he probably knows this answer too. Guess what became PII? Emplids, yeah. So yes, so yeah, he does remember with paper leave chits and had social security numbers on them too. So I had to turn my leave chit, and everything had social security. Everything was social security number. And I'm glad Ryan's here to validate my story. But that in social security number, we don't care anymore. Now we're going to go Emplid. Well, that Emplid became PII, and I'm telling you that Emplid is everywhere. I walk through life knowing it's called a OPM, Office of Personnel Management. They've been hacked multiple times. I walk through knowing that my information is out there. Any one of you at any time can go.
I do.
Pretend
I get the OPMs. Yep.
Yeah, you can go pretend to me. You can, access my bank accounts. You can do everything else. So I have to have insurance through the roof to be able to account for my identity being stolen, because I'm sure it's going to be, or it has numerous times. So
all this data, CJ, like all these identifiable pieces, right? That, some on their own are probably not, identifiable. Your birthday standing on its head isn't anything. You stick your name with it, and now we got something. Now we're starting to get somewhere, and that's what these people who do these hacking and breaching and everything really try to work that metadata to try to get that real core data to get some of this linked PII to go out there. And now you're in a company, you got millions and millions of records with PII in it. How the heck how the heck do you know where everything is? I mean, you got to take a serious, data mapping stance to try to find where everything is and moves, and what sort of data actions happen, and there's a lot.
But how important do you think that is, though? Because if I have these millions and millions of records, whether it's employee or it's customer, it's current customers or former, maybe somebody from who knows how long they're you're getting this data and this information. But how important is it that I know where this is? I know what I'm protecting. I know what I'm locking down.
How are you supposed to? How do you know how to protect it if you don't know where it is?
So I think inventorying that information. What do I have for PII? What do I have for sensitive information that's specific to my organization? I find that to be the first step. Right. It's great to have these tools, but make sure that they're in the right place. Make sure we're protecting and encrypting the right things. And access is restricted to the right folders. So it's crazy. Derek, can I get your VIN, your car VIN?
Oh yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same as my luggage.
Well, it's funny. We have a guy in our staff, Pete. They do these social engineering type hacks, and he was actually in the news one time doing it, where I think you heard him calling in to try to pretend he was somebody else, giving their own information because he forgot his password. There's also one that was on YouTube. It was a woman. She had like a crying baby in the background.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Played the whole thing up. Like, I forgot my password. I don't have time. The baby's crying, but she had enough information on the person, and the person felt bad for them and gave her the access, and it was to a bank account, and it took less than 45 seconds. It's easy. You can find it on YouTube. They're all over the place with these things happening.
Goes back to your kind of your statement before with your wife. How many people have stopped using Facebook because of the privacy piece? I know quite a bit of people that said, "Oh, that's not right. That's messed up. That they're really digging into our privacy." Okay, stop using it. Don't put your information out there. Pictures with family and names of friends and where you're living and where you're going.
Birthday.
That's a lot of private data. Birthday. Yeah.
Birthday. I mean, people, when you put your birthday out there, I don't have a Facebook account. But
me neither.
Mark, high five. When you, good thing we're doing a privacy training when we don't do Facebook, so we're smart.
Drink our own Kool-Aid.
Your birthday is on there, maybe your date of birth. Some people say, wow, 43 years ago, such and such was brought into this world. Well, I can easily figure this stuff out. These things are something you can easily figure out. Think about kids. I have 3 kids. I have a 16-year-old boy, a 12-year-old girl, and an 8-year-old boy. And my 12-year-old daughter loves TikTok. And TikTok obviously had the big privacy issues this year. And first thing I did was I went and looked at it. I don't have a TikTok account, but I looked at hers when she created it, and I looked at it again to make sure she has nothing that's personal to her on there. There's nothing that I would consider them using. It would be her name, possibly, but even her name isn't her full name that's on there. So again, making sure that you're checking these things, whether it's a personal device, it's a work device. Again, these things are all we seek linked and linkable. These things we use between business and pleasure, work and home. We're so closely tied together now, and now we're working from home. So, how much are we doing on the same device?
Yeah,
Facebook,
convenient.
right?
It's convenient.
See people in an audience. Raise your hand if you use Facebook from your work computer. I'm sure there's some that do. These things are going to be linkable, and we're going to be doing the same things together. So,
that kind of plays well into that. How we keep things private and how to lock down everything, different pieces of technology. And the hardest thing we know secure is that end user, is the user of all this information. When we weren't remote, we were at work. If you didn't have remote capabilities, you get a couple types of users, your dangerous users. And I love the scenario you put together, CJ, and we say, who's worse? Who's more difficult to handle?
Right. Well, so before I answer that, and just gives you a chance to have probably a gallon of water when I tell these two stories. But we got a question from S. Jansen, and it says, how would you differentiate or identify sensitive PII versus just PII? And a lot of that is the combination. So you take one of these things by themselves, right? Like I use the example a lot of times of like HIPAA violation, right? You don't encrypt information. What the top 10 violations are? You have, keeping unsecured files. You have gossiping. You have, whatever the case may be. And again, a lot of it is, well, one by itself, keeping an unsecured record is not going to create a breach. It's going to create that second entity, whether it's an untrustworthy employee, it's other controls that are missing that allow somebody in to go access them. So same thing with PII. My name is on this. My name's right there on the screen. Derek Morris's name is right there on the screen. How can that be considered PII? I think you start combining that with address, with email address, with some of these other pieces, and now you have what you'd consider sensitive PII.
It starts to make the whole bit now, this whole chunk of data become that
level of compromise. And again, I've got enough information about a person that I can probably get online these days between LinkedIn, between Facebook, between Instagram, between all these different things. So, all right, I'm taking a quick drink of water here before I tell my.
So, that same piece of how, what makes the PII more sensitive, less sensitive, doesn't matter. I went to a client of ours, CJ, you and I we checked in. They had an iPad. You put your name, full name, date of birth, agree, and sign. And a couple of years go by, and that IT director, that VP of IT, pinged me and said, "Hey, is birth date PII?" I said, "Not on its own. You stick my name with it and my signature now. Now we're dancing. Now we have some serious, some information here that is now stored in the cloud because it's one of those apps on there. And there was never an agreement to say it's okay for you to keep my data like this. And GDPR does a wonderful job of, allowing you to say get rid of it. Yep. Where in the US, we're not there yet. Yeah, we'll talk more about that stuff.
Yeah. Forget me, please. So, So Derek, you pose a question. So you have two users, right? And I would ask somebody in the chat to answer. So you have two users. One is an employee, so dedicated, works so hard, just wants to please everybody, answer fast, get their job done on time.
Go getter.
You go getter. Right. So you got employee one. Employee two is I don't give a flying anything. Right. I'm gonna do what I want to do when I want to do it. And if you get something out of me, great. If you catch me doing something I'm supposed to be doing, great. I'll answer. So while I tell my story, you guys are making somebody say what they think is worse, and I'll give you my opinion. And there's no right or wrong answer here. So being in the Coast Guard, I was managing security for big sections of the Coast Guard. So in this case, I was in D5 in Virginia, and I had basically from DC down to Florida and Southeast Asia and Europe. So whenever we were Coast Guard was not a mobile workforce in terms of using computers. We were desktops. We weren't laptops. We required VPN. We had DLP. We had all these things in place. So it was hard to if you weren't in the office, you couldn't do what we're doing now. We're sitting in my home office and doing my work. So we have these tools, and we have this. Anytime somebody would try to send something home, we would get alerted to it, depending on, based on title or DLP, whatever it was. But people would always try to find a way. We locked down USBs. You had to have an approved device, and if you plug something in that was illegal, we'd get notified. So you've got this 05 who is doing employee reviews. He's doing information on personnel. We've got 35,000 people, and everything is on a cadence. And this guy runs out of time during his day to get these things done. And he's got to get it out by Friday.
Full of PII, right?
Yeah.
Name, address, everything.
Yeah, you got all of your information. So he's going to try to go home and do his job. And he's able to name a file so that it's not caught by DLP. He's able to put a title so it's not caught by DLP. He does all this work to try and make sure he can go home and get his work done. And he sends this big file with hundreds of names and date of birth and middle name and it had my mom's,
Wow.
It had all this information on there. Who my parents were. It had all this. You name it, it's on there. And he sent it home so he could do his job, so he could get his job done on time, so he could work hard. He worked, 10 hours at the office and then went home and worked another 6 or 7 hours at home. So this guy was busting his to get all this work done. But in the meantime, he sends all this PII to a yahoo.com email address. That is basically saying, here you go. Because
wide open now, right?
Anyone's got a Yahoo email address, it's already been hacked. Just in case you didn't know, it's already been hacked.
Yeah.
So we have that. Now I got user number 2. This is the I don't care about anything. And we get notified after, once, you put one thing into a Google search or internet history, everything's black, everything's, blocked by category. So you can't get to anything X-rated, any pornography or anything like that. This guy from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. and if Ryan's still here, he can tell you, we usually work between 11 and, we're usually at work between 11 and 3, it's not off time. Between 11 and 3, he had over 300 search attempts for something X-rated. You name it, he put it into this Google search, and this all comes to me, and I have to review every single line, and it's all timestamped when he tried to do it. Well, you would think after the first 100 times he would get frustrated and say, "Oh, I guess I can't get through." This guy he had any tenacity. This is the field for him. Until around 2:00, he finally found an angle in, and it was through Reddit. And I wasn't even familiar with Reddit. This is probably back in 2014, I believe. And he finally got there through Reddit, and he spent the next hour looking at all this stuff before it got flushed. This guy spent 4 hours trying to circumvent our firewall and our restrictions to get out. So my point with it is, whether you're a go-getter or you really don't give an F, you're going to find a way if to get what you want, right? And that's where it kind of goes back to my life. If somebody's not protecting your privacy, do you care? Well, no.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get what I want, right? I'm going to get the outfit that I wanted, or I'm going to get the thing for the kids that I wanted, and I don't care that they protect my information. I'm going to get what I wanted. And if my information gets out there, if something happens, then
that's where the protection that these companies should have isn't really enforced yet. That CCPA is a start, right? The California privacy piece, it's starting to push down. Vendor due diligence and customer due diligence from a business to business standpoint, that's getting better. Drilling on different data protections and data privacy controls that a company might have. But there's really no big hammer that comes down and says, "Here, we're gonna fine you millions of dollars," outside of the EU, where they have a whole different spin on what privacy is for their people, their citizens.
Right. If you go to the next slide, I might actually disagree with you. And where I may is we talk about HIPAA. So I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of HIPAA trainings over the last 3 years. Company. And one of the things that makes my slides every single year is the amount in fines that the office hands down. And it's one thing for PII to get out, have a HIPAA violation. A lot of times HIPAA violation is going to be tied to PII. It's going to be tied to that sensitive health information.
Health and medical, it's going to be geared that way.
Yeah, so PHI. So we started thinking, making that correlation between PHI, that health information, and that, personally identifiable information. What a lot of these things will come down to, if any, you look at GDPR, look at CCPA, where these hammers are going to come down, is, well, what did you do to protect it? Did you give your users training? Yes, I've done it every year for the last 10 years. Here's my training roster. Here's what we did. Here's who gave it. Here's who attended, blah, 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 blah. And then you have, all right, well, you've done some kind of risk assessment to help identify any gaps in your security control, where your information might be. Yep, we've done a third-party assessment every single year, and everything was good. You start doing those things. Now you show that you have put forth the effort to identify these things.
So now your fine is
it's coming down, because now it's a case of, all right, well, it wasn't because of training. They did these assessments. So again, we're gonna have that weak user. You're gonna have that go-getter that may make a mistake. But if you're doing your things as an organization to close these gaps, then these fines are a lot less stiff. They're a lot less money. They're a lot. The hammer's not. It's more of a soft hammer that you
rubber mallet the kids would have.
Comparably. So. I think that's where those controls come in. You start talking about the controls you mentioned earlier. Having those controls in place are going to help you in this situation. It's going to help you protect the information, but it's also going to help you protect your own hiney.
Yeah.
When you show that we've done our due diligence.
There's a lot out there with all this information. That we do all these different assessments, GDPR, CCPA. As you know, too, this NIST privacy framework came about. I think it was early last year, or maybe at the end of 19, one or the other. So as we're going through it, we start reading about different data protections and different data actions and how this is protected. And it starts to wreak more and more and more of security programs that you have to put in place to help address these things. And that's where, that's why we have a job, right? That's what we're doing.
Right. And you always say it starts at the top. So I've a lot of things I've been doing lately has been about culture. So you've got these companies now who maybe was putting MFA in, and said we're having a hard time. I'll give you two more. I get stories of the yin yang today. So one, they're finally going to MFA, and they were talking about the pushback they're getting on going to MFA. And they said, well, then I'm happy to go be the bad guy, but here's what I would tell them is, if you don't want to do it, then we probably have to look for another job. Our job here is to protect this information, these records. MFA helps us do that. And this is part of the security first culture that we have to implement to protect information. This gets out one time, we're all done. We're all done. We don't have business. We don't have a on.
Isn't that difficult? Getting that buy-in is such a ringer. And some of these guys that we come and meet with, IT directors and VPs and CIOs, half the reason why they bring us in is because, he told you so too. I've been telling you so too, right, that we have to do this. And he said it too. So now we're going to do it. And they say, okay. But, it all goes back to, just like you said, all this data you have over here. Why would you not want to protect it? This is sensitive. It's, your grandmother's name and her birth date and where she lives. This is sensitive stuff. Right. But that in the U.S. isn't the way of thinking. Right.
And if as an organization, if you don't care about the customer's information, then you don't care about your organization either. Because one gets out, it leads to the demise of yours.
Boom. Here's what happens.
That's that damage. It's again, I know I hate to sound like a cynic, but sometimes I don't think a lot of these companies care about it's. I think it's a nice little catchy thing to say that they care about your privacy. They care about what's on the screen. They care about their business. They care about the money. They hopefully, again, I can't say I've never seen it. I see a lot of companies that do truly care. And again, it's that true, for the person and the employee, as well as for their own company. And they're so closely tied together that if you don't care about one, you really don't care about the other. Because again, one breach of a lot of these companies that we work with, they're done. They're not big enough to to
Yeah,
overcome it.
think about those clients we have down, that have that. It's kind of like health/medical information on their service they provide. How critical is that to them? That's their whole business. So they take it very seriously. Like we saw, they underwent some rigorous privacy kind of reviews with lawyers, and we had our third party assessment. We were doing a lot of other services with them to build those programs to support all that. They took it real seriously. It was great to see, and others not so much. It's both ends of the spectrum.
I think when you go in there, you see, kind of, go the first couple slides, and you see the data encryption, the endpoint protection, the MFA, single sign-on. I think you come back to layered security. So we're going to sit here and truly protect this information. So whether it's PII, whether it's just good old sensitive data, organizational data, employee data, customer data, it comes down to that layered security. How many layers can you get in there to really help protect that information, to protect your organization? These controls work together, nicely. These technical controls. In terms of DLP, that encryption, that endpoint protection, the antivirus, the alerting tools, your firewall. Again, you start putting all these things in place, and you've got a good mechanism to protect this information. Now you add the training. Now you add procedures in terms of onboarding, offboarding. People know what they're supposed to do when somebody gets terminated as they're coming in, how we're receiving access. So you put some of those administrative controls along with those technical and logical controls, and we've got this nice layered security system that's really going to go a long way in protecting this information and protecting your organization.
That bubbles up that culture, that understanding that, oh, hey, look, we have all these pieces that are in place that should be there. And hey, why not? It's a marketable thing. If you're in the business of aggregating data and moving it around and keeping it, well, other people will want to come to you knowing that you have the right controls in place. They're going to do their due diligence. They're going to bug you for security questionnaires and a SOC 2 and HIPAA assessments. So the inverse of reputational damage, it's reputational support, drives it up. It's going to show that people are doing the right thing, and right there on the right hand side, the money comes, the business comes, it supports itself.
Yeah. Any of you on the listening now or watching there as it gets posted, if you're getting that situation where it's getting more and more out of control, I'm having less and less control over where the sensitive information is, the good stuff is, whether we're talking PII, PHI, CUI, anything with an I, as long as if it starts getting out of control, again, is put a project plan in place, start identifying where it is, get it into limited spots, restrict that access, make sure those controls are in place, from a logical, a technical, and an administrative standpoint.
From a let's say IT is kind of owning most of that. In most cases, I see them kind of glaze over when I say that. Find your data, do this, do that. And it's almost like you got to get down to here's how. There's an S drive somewhere, right? What's on there? There's a P drive that HR and payroll have. Let's get that there. Oh, you have M365? Okay, you have OneDrive turned on? Here we go. Now we start getting it. They don't know how to start. It's kind of daunting. So that's where, we love to help and explain the bits and the bytes and how you can start getting that together, because without knowing where it is, how the heck do you protect it? And big initiatives too, to pull all those together to kind of get it on one system that's really protected. And there's some cost benefit there.
Yeah, it is, and it can cause chaos in your brain when you start picturing.
It hurts.
How am I going to go about that? And putting that project plan in place, documenting it, assigning responsibilities, identifying some of these things. And honestly, I think for me too, it's how long do we keep this data? I mean, do we keep it forever? At what point does it go? So do we archive it? And getting control over that, so you see anything that's past a certain age, where.
Yeah, in the medical and financial field, thank goodness they do give you more guidance. But outside of that, that's the question. It's, well, how long? You flip a coin, go, all right, 6 is good, or 5.
We get these hoarders who don't want to ever get rid of anything.
Stored in deleted items.
Right. That's it's just as damaging, just to hold on to it for too long, and then those systems maybe don't access as often. You don't have eyes on it. Those things
Stale.
Yeah, there's so many things out there that increase that risk of this information getting out. And again, I think for me, knowing where it is and who has access to it is my number one. Those controls are great, but a lot of the stuff happens from inside. So just because I can get inside doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to do harm with it. So again, restricting that access. Again, I'm a big need to know guy. I've done trainings for companies year after year after year, and I call myself sometimes the need to know guy. I think I probably say it. It's probably annoying how much I say it, but I really believe in it. I think if you can restrict it by need to know, based on who needs access, and that's it. I think it's huge.
What do they call that? The upside down pyramid. It's the lowest, and then more data, more data, more data. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So, so I guess from you, so you have Ryan asking a question here.
Nice. Yeah, it's like it's 42 past. We've done good talking. I would say let's fire some questions out there and see if anyone's got any.
So how do you balance the security controls, technical and administrative implementation with the needs of the business? Need to be careful not to be too restrictive. If your proposal of controls gets denied, do you then get a written acceptance of the risk
Yes.
from the business? Yeah. So Derek, Derek,
so this comes up a lot, and sometimes when Compass comes in and we're doing, let's just say like a vCISO role, we come in and a company I want to get something done in and around security, and they'll say certain pieces. We have a lot of data that we don't know where it is. There it is. There's your trigger. So now data, what are we going to do? Protect it. We're going to make sure it's retained appropriately. We're going to make sure it is mapped, found everywhere. That's the easier way to find the strategy. Outside of that, you're going to have to kind of get in there, and it depends on the resources available. There may be an IT guy that's been there for years trying to spin his wheels and not get anywhere. But talking to the people from the top, what's important to them. So you develop software, installed on-prem software. They're not going to really care about password management on the Gmail system. They're going to care about protecting the software that they build and deploy onto different company systems. There's the driver there. There's the strategy. Now, as these build up, these task lists, did that one come from Ryan?
Yeah.
So I could tell where his head's at. That's good. Is if you do have those and you're going down that road to address them, you almost act as if, I humbly would act as if like you're doing a risk assessment. Here's a risk. It's very high. You don't want to do it. Here's the date. Here's you saying you don't want to do it. That burden is now off of you. That is on a CEO's hands. That is the mud that could really dirty everybody. So if you are tasked with that and not getting any buy-in, heck yeah, Ryan, get that not sign off, but build that documentation, that trail that shows the effort's been put involved. And here's what happened and why. It could be a cost thing. It could be way more dollars to do it than it is to actually get a benefit from it.
I think that's always, balance. Something we deal with all the time is you have the operations. And again, we always, Coast Guard, Ryan can attest to this, mission. If you could ever say, well, it impacts the mission. Okay, now we have to be able to do it, or now it becomes an issue. So, operations obviously need to move forward, and accepting risk in certain situations is something you don't have a choice of. One thing that Fred here points out is regulatory risks cannot be accepted. 100%.
Correct.
So you're going to have things that you are required to comply with. And those are those regulatory, that's that governance factor. So you're having these regular audits, you're having the look in to make sure you're doing X, Y, and Z. And no, those things can't be accepted. And what's the plan to make sure that we can comply with it and maintain operations? So when you're faced with this, yes, there will be situations where you have to accept risk. Ignoring risk, no. Accepting risk, okay. And documenting that, and what's the impact? What's the likelihood and the impact of that threat or that risk, affecting operation, affecting the business? Again, you do due diligence before you accept the risk, and you document that. That's unfortunately it's part of the process. So yeah, but that balance is something that every company and every person is trying to find. Thanks for the question.